Our word is our bond, and our words are our bridge to the world through our own ideas and to each other. Welcome back to the 50/50 Project, where every week I talk through an idea on a list made up of one thing I've learned for each year I've lived. Today we're returning for the very last time to the communications category for thing number 44, respect the power of language. Words, language, communications, and the ethics that thread through all of that stuff has been my life's work. My training is in these areas, and all my work is centered on communications in some form or another, basically my entire adult life. I have been a public relations intern, I've been a speechwriter, I've worked in telephony and mass communications and customer service, which is entirely applied communication strategy. And I've worked in political communication and studied literature and language and taught composition and argument and writing at the university level. And in the end, I landed in marketing and messaging, and now I work in strategic communications. All of that to say, I have thought about the ways in which we communicate with each other for most of my professional and personal life. And so it seems fitting to me as this project sort of winds down and we come to the culmination of this list to just take a second today and talk pretty generally and pretty broadly about how important, how powerful, how useful, how potentially harmful, and occasionally how flat out dangerous our words and our language and our communications can be. I'm not going to pretend to know all the intricacies of why language and communications are so powerful. And I'm certainly not going to be able to get into all of them here. And today I just want to hit on three very specific reasons that I believe that irresponsible communications are very problematic and extremely dangerous to us right now. And three strategies, I guess, where, I think we all need to deploy to respect the power of the things we write and we say and we communicate. So, the first thing that I would say in that vein is that it's important to remember that when we wrap language around what has just been an idea or a feeling or an inkling, in some really important and hard to define ways, we make that thing real. When we say something out loud for the first time, when we write something in a letter and mail it off, when we wrestle our thoughts or feelings into a text and hit send, we're giving it substance and form. We're giving it cognitive mass and making it real. And we're also making it transferable and contagious and consequential for the people around us by pulling it out of the privacy of our own brains and giving it shape and substance and transferability out here in the real world. Language and communications also, it makes shit real because it makes shit indelible and ingrained. And the fact is, once something is said or written or shared, it can't be taken back. We can say we take it back. We can change our minds. We can issue a retraction. We can offer a correction. We can even make an apology. But once something is said, it's said, and it can't be unsaid. And it is forever out there in the shared experience of that conversation or that relationship or that context. So I think it's very important to respect the enormity of this capacity to make something real, to just bring something into being. And thereby, I think we should try to be slower to speak, especially when the things we have to share could be consequential or alchemical or hurtful. I'm responsible for what I make real. So I've got to be responsible for my language. Okay, so the second tidbit I would share is that I have learned that spin is poison. My mom told me some version of this truth when I was really young, maybe 7 or 8. And I think the reason I've always worked in communications as an adult is because I've always been good at it, even since I was a kid. And at some point, really early on, like maybe second grade, my mother, who was a very shrewd listener, caught me spinning. I had done something I knew was wrong, something minor enough that I don't even really remember what it was, and she caught me spinning it. And in that moment, I didn't lie to her about my actions, but I do remember sort of skewing my motivations and my intentions. And she could see right through me. And she sat me down and she looked me deep in my eyes and she said, "You know, you have a real gift for language, and you can learn to use that gift for good in the service of telling the truth and making things clearer for yourself and others. Or you can make a terrible mistake and you can choose to use that gift for gain or to trick others into giving you what you want. And even worse, to trick yourself about who you are and what you're doing." And she made me understand that that was a very dangerous power to have and that it came with a lot of responsibilities. And I felt like there was an elephant sitting on my chest through that whole conversation with my mother. I remember it so vividly. And she was the kind of mom you really didn't want to disappoint. She was sort of this intense person who would speak to me, even as a child, about important matters of decency and morality, right and wrong. And I think I really carry her warning to use my words and my language and my communications for good and for truth instead of letting myself spin things to my advantage or letting myself overstate things. She also taught me to qualify my language and to admit the limitations of what I knew or what I could pronounce. And so I think all of those sort of nuances have served me really well. And I still to this day truly think that spin can very easily become a poison. And of course, the implication is that truth goes beyond, factual truth and outright lies. It goes beyond that simple dichotomy and it gets beneath the surface to our own motivations. It helps me to think not just about what can be proven or disproven in, a court of law or the court of public opinion, but what I know to be true in my own gut. And that is not to say that there's not a place in the world for persuasion or a really convincing or impassioned argument or an earnest plea or a call to action or even a heartfelt admonition. All of those things are not only permissible, but also morally useful or even morally required in certain circumstances when they are operating as tools for some greater good. But spin itself, which I think typically opens and exploits that gap between what's literally true and what's moral true, I just think it's poison. And I don't want to serve it to others. And I don't want to drink it, not even from my own cup. And finally, I guess I would say the third most important thing I've learned is that I have to respect the awesome power of language to wound. Words can harm, they can even kill. And we live in a time when people can say anything, no matter how vicious or unthinkable or outrageous, to just about anybody else, and all from the relative safety of a keyboard. So much of our language now is filtered through a keyboard or onto a screen instead of spoken directly to another human face or delivered on paper that goes into a human hand. And I really think that that's making us forget some of the awesome and devastating power of our words. We forget sometimes that the reception of language remains a potently physical process. When somebody says something awful to you on the internet, you still blush, maybe you still gasp, you still feel sick to your stomach when someone is truly cruel. But I fear we've forgotten the human connection on the sending side of the equation. And sometimes I think about Emmanuel Levinas when I think about online interactions. Levinas was a 20th century philosopher, and he talked a lot about the incredible importance of the face and the power of the human face to delimit our capacity for othering. We are increasingly taking the face out of our communications, and I think we're becoming crueler as a result. We're treating others as less human as a result. And as a result, people are walking around not only offended, but too often hurt or wounded or even brokenhearted. And there are some people who are no longer here to walk around at all because of something heinous that was said to them, sometimes only online. And we've always been cruel, and there's always been the capacity to wound. I'm not saying it's a new phenomenon, but I think it's become easier for us as it's become more and more technologically mediated. I actually think that a willingness to respect the power of language, a willingness or perhaps an unwillingness to own what we make real, to reject not just lies, but also spin, and to refuse to use our words as a club to beat other people with just because we can do it with technology instead of our own hands. I think choosing that responsibility and that respect really matters now in a moment that I think is marked by terrible, catastrophic, devastating confusion and division. And I don't know if respecting the power of language will actually save us, but I'm pretty sure that continuing to disrespect it to the harrowing extent that we currently do will surely help to ruin us. So sorry, that's pretty heavy. And that's probably enough for today. I hope that the words that you hear and share today are powerful in the best possible way. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and I'll be back next week with thing number 45.